I'm apologizing in advance because I did not expect to give a presentation here. So I do not have beautiful pictures or, here we go. Is that it? Okay, then can we go down to the next? We just need this. Ah, this is the best we can do. It's okay, I can scroll down and get this. So I'm especially sorry that I don't have a photograph. Oh, there we go. Just a drawing, because the North American paddlefish is a very handsome fish. A little bit weird. The big long rostrum, it is usually about a third the length of its body. These fish can reach up to 2 meters. They are members of the sturgeon family, and so are harvested mostly for their roe to make into caviar, but also locally the meat is consumed. It's quite tasty. The United States exports mostly caviar, mostly roe caviar, but also live eggs from aquaculture facilities. We have exported quite a few to China. But mainly the trade is in the roe. Let me move this down a little bit. Ooh. Oh, no. I'm sorry, Becky, I need your help. All right, so it's interesting to talk about in terms of legal acquisition for a couple of reasons, I think. One, the first thing that you need to know about the North American paddlefish is that, thank you, that's perfect, just so we can see the map, yeah, thank you. In the United States, fisheries management within the interior of the country is done by the states. It's the responsibility of state governments to manage their fish populations and their wildlife populations. So, although we work very closely with the state governments, it is their responsibility. You can see here, paddlefish are mostly found in the Mississippi River drainage. So there are 22 states, US states, that have paddlefish populations. And I can tell you that they all have different regulations. So when we are trying to do a legal acquisition finding, we need to be careful that we know first where the fish came from, what state, that we know which agency in that state that we need to consult with. Often it's the Ministry of Natural Resources, or it might be the Fisheries Ministry. And we are very careful to be sure that any information that we receive from an applicant, we share back with those states to make sure that they can verify. So, of the 22 states that have North American paddlefish populations, there are 8 that allow commercial harvest. So that's where we see most of our export. Those, like I said, those 8 states all have different regulations in place, but they do have regulations. They have management plans, but they have different schemes. And what we look for is the paper trail. They all require a fishing permit, a commercial fishing license of some sort. Some of them also require a specific roe permit. If you are going to harvest paddlefish for the roe, you have to have a separate permit. So we would want to see both of those things. It's the responsibility of the applicant, who, by the way, is usually not the fisherman. It's usually a caviar dealer that will come to us. And we want to see who they got the fish from, make sure that they had the proper licenses. And also, in some of the states, and we would need bills of sale to see that paper trail, the chain of custody. Some of these states also require that roe dealers are licensed. And each one of those licensing requirements carries with it a reporting requirement. So the fishermen need to report to the state fisheries agency or whichever natural resources agency on what they've caught, where they've caught them. And then the roe dealers also need to report on who they bought their caviar from, their roe from. So when we get an application to export caviar, It's big. It's a stack of information because it has to include all those steps. We have worked really closely with the states so that they understand what the requirements are for CITES to make a legal acquisition finding, and then that related non-detriment finding. But as Juan Carlos said very well in his presentation, it is the responsibility of the exporter to demonstrate to us that they have acquired this product legally. So we get a big stack of information. We look it over to make sure it looks like, to us, it includes everything that we need, and we send it to that state agency and say, this is what we've received. Does this look like what you received from this fisherman, from this road dealer? And they will verify, and sometimes they'll come back and say, no, that is actually not what the report we got looked like. So it's a paper trail that we try to follow. There are also 3 states, in addition to those 8 states that allow commercial harvest, there are 3 states that, although they do not allow commercial harvest, they have programs where recreational fishermen can bring their fish to the state agency, to the state biologist, who will clean it for free, and in exchange, the state biologists take scientific data, length, weight, whatever, and they also collect the roe. And the recreational fishers are not allowed to sell their roe, but they can donate it through this process. And then it's auctioned off in these 3 states. So it's North Dakota, Montana, and Oklahoma have similar programs where they do this. They auction off the roe, usually in one giant batch, which makes it easier for us in terms of keeping track of what went where. And then the money from those proceeds either goes back into paddlefish conservation in the case of Oklahoma, or it goes to the local community to do with what they choose. So those are actually really popular programs, and it does make the paper trail a little bit easier. So I think that those are the most important things. That we need to be sure that we know where the fish were harvested, what state laws apply. And again, we really have to work closely with the state governments because, as you know, laws can change. They have management programs in place, and they may change their harvest seasons. They may change the reach or the stretch of the river where they allow fishing. Gear restrictions, all those kinds of things can change. So we are very closely in contact with the state agencies to make sure, as sure as we can, that the products are legal. I think that's the story. That's the paddlefish story.